I'm calling the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. This is a joint meeting between the town and village. Today is Wednesday, October 26th at 6 p.m. Old business, discuss comp plan oversight committee. So, would you like to report on that?
I sure would. I was charged with reaching out to Jackie at MJ and just seeing what they would think about having a role in supporting us in our oversight efforts. And she was totally excited. She said, wow, that's not something we ever really thought about. It would be such a great way for you to keep up with what you're doing. We could really help, stay on task, stay on direction and all that. They're in a good position to provide the service and feel they can, that'll keep them connected with the community. And also, so they can see firsthand how it's playing out, and they can also be supportive of us. She had a few suggestions. The way they would see it happening is that if they were, if they were brought on, they'd have a meeting in January. She would like to at least do the first one in person with representatives from each community who would be responsible for providing information on municipal activities. We had talked about that being department heads, planning board, and representatives of the board. They would briefly go over the comprehensive plan and a little bit how it all came about, mostly because a lot of those people are people who weren't involved in the developing of it. So then at that point, we have that matrix at the end of the comp plan. They would create a fillable online version of that so that whomever, everybody, the department heads, the planning board people could just fill in as they went. They could see the areas that, where they're doing something and see where it is it. So, and we talk about that. In the at mid-year, there would be a check-in to be sure people are keeping up. I think that would be just whether it's a Zoom check-in to see if people have questions or I think it was just a mid-year check-in. And then in November, they would gather all the information from the matrix. She thinks there would probably be another form they develop, a Google form or something where people could just, if they hadn't really filled in the matrix completely, they could just fill in and provide information, and they would prepare a report for each board. So she said that's sort of a first line of general work, help with the oversight and the reporting. She said she also feels like they could be valuable as a resource facilitator if there hasn't been implementation in some areas where we want to have implementation. Because they have this experience with other communities and because they work with us on this, they can recommend, paths to follow to complete it, possible funding sources, potential partners, things like that. I think it could be a big value added to our municipal planning and implementation of what we said we were going to do. She said she thinks the most reasonable way to charge for this would be by the hour with a not to exceed. The more people on staff and volunteers, whether it's planning board people and all, the more they do their jobs, the more they do, the less MJ will have to do. And therefore their involvement would be reduced. She's happy to do a formal proposal, but thinks they'd be talking in the neighborhood of $8,000 to $10,000 for the not to exceed. She thinks it could also be as little as half that. And I just wrote in my notes, well, that sounds like a lot. I do think it's important that we remember we'll be splitting it 3 ways. And I think it has real potential to help us better follow through with our comprehensive planning and have expert input on our strategies and our funding. It's not, doesn't seem like a lot to split. So we've had 2 sort of long conversations about this. I said, let me take this back to the boards, and if people are interested in hearing more, and people have other questions that I can ask Jackie, I'm happy to do that. Other ideas that I can share with Jackie, and then they would be happy to make a formal proposal if they're interested in doing that. And I guess the one thing would be, I think for this to be effective, we can start at the beginning of the year. It'd be really great. so we can make a decision and either get them signed on if we're gonna do it. So the agenda item is discuss plan, comp plan oversight committee. This was an alternative, or this was a committee and how to have that reviewed or overseen or organized and facilitated. That's what I got.
Did you indicate an hourly rate?
No, it's not to exceed, I didn't know. It's probably not dissimilar to.
I would be interested in hearing the proposal. I like the idea of it from the standpoint of, I think this is a very good way to keep on top of the comprehensive plan. And it's very easy to put a lot of time and effort into something and then it just gets, things turn kind of quiet. I went through a couple of bad years. I think it'd be a good time to get the comp plan back where it's supposed to be. And then instead of us, every 5 or 10 years looking at a big layout of money, to redo a plan where we're starting from day one, this would be something that would be kept up to date all the time and very easily to renew, if you want to call it a renewal. I mean, 5 years from now, the comp plan should be up to date, and they're saying, renew every 5 years. Personally, I think it's a good way to stay on top of something that we've spent a lot of money on.
I think it's a really good point, and I think the potential of turning it over into revisions of the comp plan, which will be much less cumbersome than the first time around. I also think it's a good way to engage really everybody who's involved, all the players, and because I think that'll.
And would this allow us to do revisions current rate right off the bat?
As we
Because
go.
we know there are things in that comp plan, the way things have changed over the last 3 years that really need to be addressed in the one that we have. And it'd be good if we could, do that. Okay.
Lee, did you want to say something?
I was going to.
Great idea. Makes sense. Keep us on top. Let it slide. So the next step would be for her, his proposal.
So should I ask them to look into that? I guess there's 2 more steps. That is one of them. And the other is to talk to Elizabeth Falls and to see how they are to the whole process and whether they want to be part of it.
I'll reach out to Elizabeth Falls. I thought Bob Sanborn is on Zoom right now, and I'm not sure. Bob, can you hear us?
I can.
I'm not sure if you had a conversation. I believe at our last joint meeting, you were going to reach out to the Rensselaer Falls mayor to inquire about this specific item.
And I did. And there is some interest in Rensselaer Falls being part of this. So I think it's, they would be good partners with us as a group on this.
Mary, you have my notes.
I do have your notes.
So
Yes.
get a conversation with Mike. Okay.
Glad you will follow up on this.
Meantime, I'll just go ahead and get that to Jackie and ask her for.
Yeah, the sooner she can get us the proposal, the better.
Right. I think from the conversation I had with her, even though it took a while for her to get back to me, it sounded like they had pretty well.
This, another thing is, Lee, you're a very big part of this. I'd like to hear, what you have to say, whether it's good or bad. If you got a comment, I'd like to hear.
Just a couple of things. One about you can't change the plan in any substantive way without doing another public hearing and then adopting a revision. You're supposed to do a plan every 10 years. I think there's meant to be some fluidity with it, with the matrix and things like that, maybe updating the matrix and the status of some of the projects would be a good way to keep it current as far as where we are with accomplishing things. So I do definitely agree with that. As far as the idea about them helping to facilitate projects, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing if we wanted to push them. However, we also have to be mindful of capacity. We have a lot of projects going on. So just because there's a lot more in there, doesn't mean we can do them all in the next 5 years. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I think she was talking more about, and in fact, what she said is if there are things that we want to be getting to, and we're having a hard time doing it. I don't think they see themselves coming on as consultants to that. It's more just facilitating and giving ideas. That's what I gather. from the conversation. Not that they're- It was, if there hasn't been implementation in areas that we.
For an agreement to.
Well, the next item is who's gonna do the upfront, if we, take this on, right? The payments, like who's gonna sign the contract, and the payments, and that type of thing. Because we're right now, plus with our 2023 budget, we need to. So,
If it's a three-way split, if it's a two-way split,
but one of us needs to sign the contract and let's facilitate that, like we did with the company.
Well, the other thing that is gonna have to happen is there will need to be, I would say, point people from all three municipalities assigned to this, so that there's somebody who's the connection, contact, for Jackie, making the wage and then, makes sense between, but suggested last time we could make sense. But that would just.
So do we want to wait till we get the proposal and then have another joint meeting to discuss? But our board, we have to consider. Okay, we can talk about that. Budget work session. It's going to be fun. Okay, anything else regarding that? All right, great. Thank you, Carol, for following up with that and getting all that information. I'm gonna hand this to Heidi. All right, new business. Number 1, 7 Main Street satellite space. We're getting there. We're real close. As you know, this has taken months. There've been a lot of steps to it, but we're getting there. There's a few more steps that have to be taken. We actually got the technology set up today. That's a good thing. But what we still need to do is the building committee needs to meet. We need to talk about signage out front. And once the space is all set up, the citizen committee met next week, and it's a very nice group, and they're willing to help set up the space. And it's going really well. Once everything's set up, then we need to have Tim Nolan go in and do an inspection. Code enforcement. He's already aware, he's already put in a request to the property owner, and that will be facilitated. So once Tim signs off, then we'll be good to go. Linda's hours will be the same as what they are now, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and 2 hours on Thursday, and then we'll go from there. We did discuss that Rachel will serve some, the assistant will be down there as well. She has been working remotely, but yeah, so it's gone fast and furious. The building committee has met and approved the major expenditures. And then we've got that pretty much all set to invoice the village for 50% of the cost so far. So a lot of blood, sweat, and tears is thrown into this, and it's really, it's nice. It's looking good. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that.
And I asked, what is the citizen committee? Or who is the citizen committee?
So it's a group, there's so much to unpack, right? And we can't have Linda do it all herself, right? So it's a group of people that she put together, and they're coming in to help her unpack and set up the rooms. This is, there's heavy boxes. You know, don't worry about be moving those, and, yeah. So there's help. And volunteer to.
And are there any kinds of plans or discussions for some sort of opening?
We're looking at that.
That would be of interest to the community.
Absolutely, and I spoke with St. Mary's Church today, seeing if they're interested in, you know, upgrading their side of the building. And that sort of thing, but gonna bring it to the building. Down. We also need to get some type of curtains in there because that front room is very. So it's looking really good. A lot of work is going into it. So, yeah, we need to have some training as well. Linda's very excited. Everybody is, I think. So, yeah. Okay. 64 Main Street. Mayor, did you want to give any updates on that and where we're?
Well, I
where
don't
we're at?
have much to communicate. There's written to DEC again to see where they're at. Jerry and I talked. I don't know if he's heard anything back yet. Okay. We're pushing a little bit to try to find out what their plan is. The next step in the cleanup. Concerned that people keep walking through there, and it's a little rough. I'm going to make sure that it's not cancer. The choice could be the fencing up, so that's good enough. Sort of part. You can see that our building a whole lot better. Cleaned all the shrubbery out. It's this building. It's a lot more. Don't have anything to share. We're still, I think the contract's been through January. And that's where we're at.
Anybody have any questions? Another contest. Okay, the next item is the Bernier Carr and Associates Municipal Building Space Report. They have, Mike and I met with them 4 weeks ago. They had preliminary schematics of the space for the new building, and they have reached out. We gave them some feedback, and so now they have a second version.
We really
And I
had
think-
3 or 4 options. How things could go. Be fine.
So they asked if they could meet with us, I think on Friday, and I really feel like the building committee should join us. That's Bob and Carol. So that we have that step. Is it next Friday?
I think it's,
So they're looking at next Friday at 2 o'clock.
I'd have to check my schedule. It's the first time here.
So we'll send another email about it. And, they have another version.
Are we gonna get to see the versions or just gonna walk in and we not see anything?
They'll have all the printouts. And did they send them
The rest of us would like to
email
see it.
first?
I haven't seen that.
The rest of us would like to see it.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
So the rest of us would like to see it as well.
well, they have, yeah, they'll have the up-to-date ideas after they were refined, but needed to have some work done. It's just very general. This would be a whole lot more detailed and give you a better representation of it.
Sure. Is there any reason the first draft didn't go to the building committee?
Well, there were like 4 or 5 drafts. And I don't know, I have them in my office, I have copies. Did you get an email about them?
Me?
No, we got them in the form of an email. I thought the next step we were gonna move with where we were at. Coming up.
I haven't checked.
Is it something that?
No, I think the intention was is that this next step, more people would be involved in seeing how it goes.
So,
Look at some of the other options.
so here, to Bob's point, do they have electronic versions that we can all see as you go into that meeting? So-
We don't have them yet, right?
Yeah, that would be great for us to be able to, so if we have any, if it's just the building committee who's going to lead. if we have things to-
Yeah, it's gonna take a while to get things calm down to where people are more comfortable with it.
Any other questions on that? All right, shared services agreement. I believe it's in the shared services agreement. The mayor and I are going to review those before the end of the year. And then we'll go from there. Make sure that we're on track with that. I'm sorry?
Are these just, this is the annual review?
Yeah.
Got it.
Not any,
If we can get them.
Yeah, we do not have one on recreation. Okay, number 5, the BOA grant reimbursement. I just wanted to go on record that, you know, we have submitted everything. The last submission was for 75,000. We'll get 90% of that, but we're still waiting for it. There was an email about something about all the contracts statewide being wrong, but ours was fine.
And there's some emails that ours was fine.
Ours was fine, but it just seems like this last version is taking longer than usual. And as we all remember, the BOA grant, it's a town grant, but you funded it, you've spent the money, the reimbursement comes to our account, and then we give it back to you. So that, that, once that hits our revenue account, you know, we'll forward that, but it's just taking a little bit more time, and I don't know why, so, Lee?
They have taken up to 9
I'm
months.
sorry, can you
They have taken up to 9 months to reimburse us for things, so we're still within that. But in this instance, after our contract dates actually closed, the consultant was still responsible for submitting our nomination package. And that was submitted to the state, and it has to go through several channels at the state. It went through an initial review. They came back with comments at least twice. And the final version with the most recent updates was submitted a couple weeks ago, maybe. So that's why they haven't processed the final payment yet until that nomination package was.
So once that hits our account, we'll get the check.
And what that means is once that's approved, we will have a formally recognized brownfield opportunity area designated.
Will that be on the website that will? Great.
On our website,
Yeah, well,
the nomination package.
Yeah.
Once it's in its final version, we can certainly put it on there. I don't know if there's a final document or how it, what form it ends up in, but yeah, whatever that final nomination is, that designates us, we will make sure that it's.
a lot of work into that, and thank you to the Economic Development Steering Committee for being the oversight committee to get this done. Yeah. The joint policy development process, I put this on there because, just because of the rec committee made a recommendation for a joint policy. And then the town board approved it, but then it went back to the village board and it didn't get approved. So I'm recommending that anytime we try to do a joint policy, that we do it at a joint meeting. So that, you know, it's not chopped up like that. Because we had to rescind what we said, and then we had to approve the new version. So does that make sense? Everybody? Sure. For that, okay, great. Town solar projects. We're going fast and furious still. You have seen a map of them, right? So.
We have something hanging around.
So I didn't know if anybody on the town board wanted to add. Say, but
Just enjoy Canton as it is now, because it's not going to be the same.
Well, we, on record that we will oppose at least one. And we're in the process of writing a letter to the planning board. for opposition. The public hearing, I guess, is scheduled now.
The side of it that's hard for us to, or at least hard for me to swallow, is that, the community solar projects, we do have a lot of oversight over, we have a lot of control. But they're the ones that will supply local power for us to use. And the one that is not as attractive to us, I think the rest of the community will be the 1,700 acre. That's the- no matter what we say, they can go back to the state and say, this is not,
It's not substantive, and they can be exempted from anything on our local law.
some pretty much, so I enforce it. It's, I got to think about it, and I ended up in Canton, there's a seaway coming through. That was in the 50s. Everybody thought this was wonderful. President Rice, Canadian premier was done. What did we end up with? 765 TV money. The North Country now is a major target for solar because of the generation and the power line that is here down the city. These large projects look for, they gotta have a way to power. And so,
If I were to make a suggestion to the village, it would be to apply for intervenor funds and get a seat at the table and start getting your voice heard. That's what I was suggesting. There's intervenor monies available. You can apply for them as a stakeholder, as could community groups or other stakeholders in the community. Apply through EDF and get a seat at the table and roll up your sleeves and start speaking up. That's what I suggest. And that goes for both universities, the hospital system. Everybody needs to get in the game quick.
So how do we let all those players know that?
Inviting them to the public workshops, inviting them to town board meetings, inviting them to planning board meetings, ask them to call us, to ask us questions, all of the above.
in EDF's defense, the major, they are having workshops, they are having public meetings, they had one at Best Western, they had one at SUNY. The community isn't, to me, at least, I've attended both of them, not impressed with the turnout.
Still, people are still sleeping.
And unfortunately, by the time they wake up, it may be too late.
And to Jim's original point, I think folks are distracted by the number of projects. Trust that the community projects are getting due diligence at the town level. It's the EDF Ridge Road project that people need to pay attention to. The other projects, I feel very content that we have a process in place that is providing the oversight necessary. But the EDF one is going to affect everybody in this community and in the county for that fact.
So how do we understand the, getting a seat at the table and trying to be your friends? My understanding has been that there's no intervention. The state's just gonna march forward anyway, no matter what we do or
Well,
what.
well, certainly if nobody's kicking and screaming, they're gonna have a free ride. But like any project, squeaky wheels get the grease, and the more people that are speaking up and with their particular issues about the project, the more clout we have as a board in negotiations. If it's just us
But
against
so there
them,
are negotiations still. It's
there's
not-
also just negotiations on everything from road use agreements to pilots, to host community benefit agreements, to, I mean, visual breaks. I mean, everything is on the table. And they are sitting down with us and talking to us. We already know where we might have some leverage, and we know where we don't have any leverage. And right now, it's just us and them, and nobody else in the community has engaged yet, and it's beyond time.
Heidi, I don't know if you can get on email and fill up the map. I would like to bring them down, but if not, if you could forward that map to the village, what you're gonna see is we found.
Well, and
I do
I,
have copies up in my office as well.
I do appreciate Tom's most recent
But there's a-
article
there's
in the
an updated
Watertown
one.
Times and Plainville, or getting it right on the front page. That is critical, but right now, there's stakeholders in this community, the university specifically, who just, it's moving and not saying anything yet, and it's all hands on deck.
And to me, it's not about trying to stop something. It's about trying to
Shape it.
make a community, hold them accountable for what they're doing.
We're not gonna stop it,
Because you
but
can't.
we can shape it, and even if we shape it in little ways, at least we shaped it. If we forfeit the opportunity to shape it in any way, we all should, we're not doing their job.
We can slow it down so that we have the opportunity.
It's slow enough now that there's, I mean, but it's moving. I mean, they've got an unlimited budget, and they have a team moving this, and we're canted.
In the new map, I think it's up to 1,700.
That's what the project is. Then you've got the about 7. Then some.
Yeah, those amount to less than 300 acres combined, the other 7. The EDF is 1,700 acres of panels, not of project area, but of actual.
Huge.
And they've just increased it by 200 acres, and it also includes a battery substation, it includes a substation, and it includes a maintenance facility, all located off Old Route 11.
Just.
And if I may, one of the biggest things I have an objection to, other than the whopping $37 per family per year that we're supposed to get, which is a lot of coffee, but other than that, not much. It's the landscape and what that is going to do to our landscape, and how that's going to look down Route 11. It's the entrance almost to most of St. Lawrence County. And I think that's where most of the folks need to jump on this bandwagon and make sure that we do, as Jim and Bob have both said, hold these folks accountable. Because if we don't take action, then they're going to do what they want to do when they want to do it.
Jim, you have said over and over again, the landscape of the town of Canton is going to change from agricultural to solar. And
Industrial, whatever you want.
At least in the Route 11 corridor.
At least in that corridor. And, up, if you go up Old Kelly. And I mean, they talk about, and they show us, we show us visuals of, how they're going to screen, like, well, if you go up Old Kelly, it just, both sides. of it. And up there for probably about a mile, both sides. of it.
Even where Shed is the Route 11 corridor, because that topography actually goes uphill to the Coakley Road. So there's no not seeing it.
There's that one section that can be from Old Kelly all the way over to 11, across 11 to the other side.
And we've made a point, the big point of contention is gonna be the gateway into Canton, and that's basically where we're focusing our energy on pushing back, because that's what everyone's gonna see.
And I don't know how many of you have been over to the Potsdam Elementary Middle School area, when you drive in. So,
That's tiny.
and that's, yeah, that's tiny, yeah. But it,
So anyway, with regard to the village, I think, reaching out to EDF and starting to send them a letter, and you want to be at the table and applying for their reader funds.
Should be able to put some more, you can't, 2,200.
We can figure out.
You just look and see, you got a good idea of what the village can do as far as size.
It's about the people to the footprint.
No, compare.
so you mentioned that you're objecting to which one,
States.
The one.
next to
And that's
the,
consistent with the comprehensive plan, and I think that's a good idea.
That's the one we're currently objecting.
And we have county objective as well.
Yeah.
But the planning board has approved every project that the county shut down.
The town plan.
Correct. The open.
Well,
but why did the county object to this one?
The county's objected to every.
Because of the agricultural value of the land.
the same reason-
that
same
and-
reason we.
That and its
This-
accessibility to the village infrastructure and what the comprehensive plan.
This one's a little bit different than a couple others. Yeah, physical location. So,
Just say that again, who overruled?
The county planning board and office have basically told the town planning board that they're not approving of these projects, and they've cited various reasons, mostly being prime farmland. But in the case of State Street 310, because of our stated need for land in the perimeter of the village for expanded housing, et cetera, where there's already village infrastructure. So that was the only one that had a second point beyond prime farmland. And prime farmland was already known, the state is not going to support any community that shoots down a project based on prime farmland, because if houses wanted to be built on this same prime farmland, the houses would be going up and we'll be giving a rat's you know what, so,
17.
sorry?
The houses don't take up that much space.
No, I'm talking about the community size projects, the smaller projects, but sorry. Well, my point, Beth, was the state is not going to support a fight that's citing prime farmland as the reason. They're already going to, that's non-substantive in their mind, and the electrification of the grid is far more important than this farmland in New York State Times right now. And they've got ag and markets supporting that, they have the DEC supporting that, they have basically every entity that governs farmland in New York State supporting the use of farmland and solar. So that puts us in a very difficult position.
But that's all we do to approve, so.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
They'll be defeated.
But we'll be able to.
So these solar companies are signing leases with property. So it is what it is. And it's their name. Very lucrative. So, it's come fast and furious, and, you know, I'll say it again. Kudos to Bob and Jim and Eric Gustafson and the planning board for getting that local law started. Us going through that, because I don't know how many other communities have a local law that we do.
Well, we've known about this project for 3 years now, so it's not fast and furious. I think people are just slow to react and get a grasp of actually what it means, but every meeting, we hit the table and make sure that it gets in the paper so people start paying attention. What else do we do?
In the last couple of years, we've been kind of People been distracted.
Yeah, it's the perfect storm because I think people are checked out and
Yeah.
just trying to stay mentally sane right now. You know, until something like this just seems a behemoth and it's somebody else's problem. We can't deal with it right now.
We're talking 30-year leases, yes?
These panels are never going away.
I was
Once
gonna-
they're there,
once
they're never going away.
Yeah.
The value in these projects is the on-ramp onto the grid. And once they have that, it's a money-making machine. The technology will change, it become more efficient, but the energy will still be produced at these locations, one way or another.
So is the grid gonna be able to handle all this? Or are they gonna have to upgrade the lines even more?
They've just upgraded.
They don't have the capacity
They're gonna start taking, they're gonna take other forms of electric generation offline, coal plants, et cetera. So it's not as simple as that question. Whether the grid can handle it.
I'm gonna push that forward right now, because they want all school districts in this area to be electric
5 years.
in 5 years. And school districts in this area that don't have the power capacity in their area, you're talking $2, $3, $4 million to get the power to the schools out in the rural ones. So, I mean,
for heat.
yeah.
No, for running the school bus.
Run the school bus.
Oh, right.
All buses.
No more
buses,
internal
all electric.
combustion engines for school buses
They
in
want-
5
they
years in
want
New York
school
State.
buses.
Right.
Electric.
And I don't know why people, you know, think this is so easy to do. They're paying no attention to some of the problems that are created, you know, particularly rural districts. And we have some rural.
We're going through a huge cultural shift of how we electrify and live our lives, and we're at ground zero of it. And we're just not prepared as a society to deal with the changes that are going on. And this is,
And electric and the weather that we have up here too. Not only is it cool, but like weather.
Okay, so how do you, I'll send that to them. Hi, Toby.
Good evening. May I interrupt since you don't have public comment on the agenda and just add to this discussion because I have a couple of comments relative to solar. I am not opposed to solar. I have solar on my property. But I would like to say that I would hope that the website for the town and village of Canton could start reflecting some of the thinking, perhaps even some of the positions, and certainly some of the spreadsheet or location information. I mean, I can't juggle where these 7 or 8 projects are. I don't even know where they all are. So it would seem to me that the website would be a perfect place to start putting information out so that we can begin generating some public input in addition to the media. Is there any reason that the spreadsheet grid of addresses in progress toward completion couldn't be out there? The map that you're speaking of.
I have spoken to Heidi and we're working on that.
And
Yeah.
perhaps it even could be the website has a lot of content. So this needs to be a focus. This is kind of like our emergency situation. So some way to see this stuff without having to drill down multiple layers of multiple menus to get to it. So I would respectfully request that we make a point. Town and village are on the same page here. And look, folks, there's information to be had. I'd really appreciate it.
Is the CT committee meeting tomorrow? Yep.
It's on our
Okay,
There you go.
all right, all right. It's, I don't even know what to say anymore, except we're gonna keep it on the agenda and just keep talking about it. You know, there's still a lot of people that don't know what's going on. We're, keeping it moving. All right, number 8, the 12 Styles Ave, or the 12 Styles Street grant update. I was thinking about that, where we're at with that. And then I spoke with the mayor about that agenda item, and mentioned that hearing of some sort going on. I was just wondering where the committee was.
Well, there's
That
a
particular
There's a public hearing scheduled for our meeting. For the street. We'll dedicate it over to the current one that's paved, plus the piece that's, takes it up to the property lines, where the town, the other lots. So, that
The survey is complete.
survey is complete, request dedication is complete, Jerry has everything. Public hearing, meeting. Action on September. So next.
Okay. With that being said, the town needs to continue this meeting as a budget work session, and so we want to do those, we want to do a motion to adjourn.
Yep, I need a motion. to adjourn.
What's the-
16th.
I think that's right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think it's the 16th. Yes, 16th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the town board's going to continue with the budget work session.
That should be a done deal. I don't know, there's silence. Things that have to be done. Expect it. For the dedication.
Yeah, you passed your resolution at the last meeting.
Since you've been with.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Yeah, electric bill's gonna blow it right now.
Well,
It's been working. We've had more like this. I remember when it was an 80-degree day.
Yes, last is in March. I think
You got it.
yeah, turn the house set up.
That's all.
Yeah, we'll stop.
What it rains, if it's just one. Yes, we do.
Okay, we're still recording, Heidi?
You almost need it. That's a long way around there.
Yeah. You read what you say.
Like this, we need to keep it recording. Your name is still on. All right. We're just waiting for a few more board members to get back. Doesn't pass the law, it does no.
No, he can vote. But for the forum, you got
That's
three,
right.
you got three board members at the table. So look at page 20, look at page 21.
Angel is
Go to page 21. Number, page 20, number 2.
Remember, recording's still going on.
What do you think about that one, Bob?
I gotta see the rationale behind it.
No might have.
I know where I'm gonna send that to.
Oh,
Perfect
no,
timing.
perfect timing. I was like, come on here.
Stack your text.
Yeah.
That's not what I thought.
Okay, so, hi.
You get good advice from somebody. I think I know both.
Okay, you ready? Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so at our last budget meeting, Bob Santa Martin, you're here?
Yes, I can. Thanks.
Okay, so the board decided on a few changes. I was directed to make those changes and bring back a new budget to the board and go from there. But I understand that there might be another committee recommendation of some sort, and we need to look at that. So there's two items that were to be followed up on. One was the court, second court clerk position, and then there was discussion about the fire department allocations. So, you know, I did all the changes as requested by the board, and so now we need to open it back up. So I'm gonna open it back up to the court committee.
So, so what we looked at, John and I met with the justices, and based on the budget changes, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes,
Okay. I just got some feedback. That's the only reason I'm wondering. But I guess we're okay. We needed to find 15,745 after all said and done. And so what we looked at were a couple of things. One option was, of course, to change the position, one of the clerk positions to half-time, or take it to the Justice Committee and find out what they would recommend. And at this point, we've looked at it, and for the reasons that I indicated earlier in my email to everyone, the fact that we weren't open all of the time over the summer, the justices have agreed to make sure that every Wednesday, with the exception of those Wednesdays those months rather that have a Wednesday, a third Wednesday, that they'd open all of the time on Wednesdays, that would generate 15,745, which was the shortfall. And we all agreed that would work better than cutting a person to half time. And in addition to that, there's, I think, some sound reasons why that makes sense. Number one, we weren't open, so there's no revenue to be had. So, you know, without being open, you can't generate revenue. But number two, and equally as important, is the bail reform laws have, and I see that both Justice Foster and Morgan are on. The bail reform laws have changed to such a degree that 1.5 clerks can't do that work. And I'm not sure either Mike or Rochelle, if you guys want to chime in to give us some better insight in that bail reform. Even with the law, even with not being able to charge, there's still paperwork that has to be done that's mandated by the state. And I think that's really, really important for the board to hear that, because I think that speaks to everything that we're talking about here. So, do one of you guys want to chime in?
Yeah, I can certainly chime in. Can everybody hear me okay?
yes.
Yeah, I mean, bail reform really kind of hit the court in the gut. Even as far as collecting fines, generating fines, whatever, but the paper has tripled. It used to be, you know, you didn't have to send them 3 or 4 different letters in the mail for just a simple traffic ticket, speeding, say, and now you do. Mark was doing the best he could do by himself, but he was getting way behind in his work. One of the reasons why he didn't take a lot of vacation time was because he was trying to stay afloat, and I could see him just becoming more overburdened with the paperwork that we needed the help that we asked for. And you know, it's with order protections that have to be issued and put into the state system, comptroller reports, all that stuff. And Aaron has done a wonderful job getting us caught back up. Quite honestly, the court could actually benefit from a third clerk. But we're doing well with the 2 clerks that we have. And so I can't even imagine if we went back to 1.5, we're going to get back behind. And we have state mandates that we have to do now, just even disclosure. Someone gets a speeding ticket, all the disclosure has to be sent to the person that gets the speeding ticket, such as video, audio, radar logs, you know, pay all the paperwork. And it's just a lot to keep up. And I don't believe the legislature was thinking ahead when they enacted this. But it's caused a backlog in the courts. So, thank you.
Thanks, Mike. So what I did is I looked at what we originally had in there as a full-time position. And so the salary was 35,617, ERS was 3739, Social Security was 2724, and then the health insurance buyout was 1,200. That's a position of 43,281. And then if we went back, the part-time position, which we calculated and put in as I was directed to do, was 19,760 at 20, that was $20 an hour. The ERS was 1,600. The Social Security was 1,511. Garnering a total of 22,872. So the difference between a full-time and the part-time position is 20,409. So I'm not sure, Bob, where you got that, but I double checked the numbers, and we can certainly have Angela double check those as well. So we need to, I don't know, John, you want to add in, open it back up, because I did make that change in the latest version of the budget.
I have a question. Bob, you had mentioned that, you said every 3rd Wednesday, you mean every 5th Wednesday, so 4 courts a month we're gonna have?
No. What I said was there are certain months where there's 3 Wednesdays in a month.
5 Wednesdays. 5 or 3?
No, there's certain months that there are 5 Wednesdays. My mistake. Yeah, 5 Wednesdays. So every month there'll be four court sessions, which did not happen over the summer. So, but Mary Ann, in answer to your question, I wasn't looking at what you were looking at. When we looked at the 2023 budget change recommendations that you gave last month, the last session, you recall that?
Yeah, I gave you my proposal.
Right. So under account expenses, it said we need to cut 60,645. Okay. So as part of that 60,745, 20,000 of it came from contingency. Okay, are you with me?
Oh, you've lost me. I don't know what you're speaking about.
I've got it. Well, you
Are you
can't.
talking about the revenues now? Are you talking about the revenues?
No, I'm talking about your sheet that says account expenses. It was the 2023 budget change recommendations, and it stated 10/20/22.
Find that.
So while Marianne is looking for that, so there's a commitment to have court every Wednesday through the end of the year now?
No, there's a commitment to have court session every
Just
Wednesday.
thinking about, just thinking about projections for the rest of the year.
Thanks.
Right, right. So there, you know, where there's, aside from when there's a fifth Wednesday. Okay. So at any rate, let's go back to Mary Ann's question. So under account expenses, we need to cut 60,745 in expenses. Now the reverse can happen also. You can actually add revenues. Right, because that does the same thing at the end of the day. So the cut was to cut special items out of that was 20,000. We cut that out of contingency. That brought down the balance to 40,745. Okay, then we went back and added back in 25,000 under mortgage tax. Because that only reflected, the original number in there only reflected 6 months of mortgage tax, not 9. So we added that 25 back in.
I think my notes say 15. We added 15 back in.
Now it went from 65 to 90. That's 25,000.
Put it in 15,
Okay.
went to 80, and then at the
Then
end,
90.
before we were done, we went to 90.
Okay.
Right. So that gave us the 25,000. Subtract that 25 from the 40, that left us a balance of 15,745. So regardless of the benefits, regardless of all that, which are already in the system already, all we needed to come up with was 15,745. Regardless of anything else. So to come up with that 15,745, by maintaining for next year every single Wednesday, with the exception of every month that has 5 Wednesdays, we can get to that 15,745, adding it back into justice fees. Because that's the number we were short, not 23. And that's where I come up with that number. So that's what our recommendation is. John, did I miss anything?
Oh.
Well, what I think what we need to do, if this board is in agreement to keeping it back at the full time, is Angela and I will plug in the numbers and see how it all pans out. But that, I wanted to show the difference in the two positions. So.
Right. But arguably, the only thing we're looking for is 15,745 to make it whole. And then we wouldn't have to affect a staff member. And more importantly, an entire department. So again, that's our recommendation, respectfully, and I appreciate that.
Any further discussion?
The numbers he talked about make sense to me, because, and the way I look at it is, right now, they're averaging 2 court dates a month. And they're still generating, on average, $6,500 a month in just 2 days. So if they go back to the 4, and just say you just double it, to 12,000 a month, you multiply that out over 12 months, now you're at $144,000 for revenue. Whereas we only put in here 90 to start with. So we'd be safe to add on that $15,000 Bob's talking about, in my mind. I'm okay with it. Last thing I want to do is put a person's liability. If we can do it some other way.
you're saying increase the revenues to 105,745? Position, put the position back in.
Yes. Please.
Again, I'd like Angela to run the numbers with us putting the position back in and then increasing that and then see where we're at.
Okay.
I mean, if everybody's in agreement to go back to the full-time position.
Committee's looked at it, the committee recommended it. The only thing that, you know, I've always been leery of, you know, I know what they're trying to say. I don't agree with Bob on the fact that you can cut expenses or you can increase revenues. It's the same thing. To me, cutting expenses is a given. That's definitive. Increasing revenues is a wish, and I mean, as long as it happens, it happens. But I know I've been here a long time. When I was, for the 8 years I was supervisor, I never ever exceeded on revenues what we took in on that given year. Sales tax coming at 700,000. That's what we budgeted for the next year. And you always hoped that it come in higher, same with mortgage tax, whatever it come in at, that's what I budgeted at, hoping that would increase. And that's how I built fund balance was whenever they were over. I think in the 8 years I was supervisor, there was 1 year that we fell short, I think about $8,000 on projection on sales tax, but the other 7 years was always focused. And so, you know, I mean, if we get back on track, I mean, we used to bring in, you know, 130,000 on revenues from justice, but a year ago it was 83. This year, we're questioning whether are we going to get to 83, and now we're hoping that we're going to be at, you know, like you say,
115.
and if all things being good, you know, 144 would be wonderful. So.
How many court days did we have in 2022 so far?
You know, we just missed a month ago.
The justices, yep. You know, how many court dates did we have this year so far?
Can I speak for a second?
Sure. 18
Hello?
court dates.
We can hear you. Hi.
Reports, if you add them all up, through the end of September, 18 have been held.
So that's from January to
Through
current
the end of September.
18.
18.
Out of a possible 36 at 4 weeks, 4 months.
Well, it's not 36 because there's some 5-week months in there. So
But I only count four per month, right? So at 9 months, that's 36 potential court dates and that's 18. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, Angela is slugging in some information, so while she's doing that, do we want to go to the next item that was brought up?
So then we're changing that from 90 to 115.
No,
105, 745.
105.
it should be 105, 745, not 15.
But again, I'm asking her to put in that full-time position again with those 4 items.
well, then they should already still be in there, Mary Ann.
They
We never took
should,
them
but
out.
again, they just. Well, no, I took out I made it to a part-time position as directed by the board, so now I'm asking Angela to put it back in there, and then we'll see where it goes on. So, so while she's doing that, I'm going to talk about the other item that was brought up. the fire department.
Yes.
About Sanborn.
Yep. So I had a discussion with Bob Crow on Monday. And I asked him about the net income for the saving comment that he put on his budget. And essentially what that net income transfer to savings is for, it's to utilize that money for use for effectively net income to capital reserve. And what they were using it for was for apparatus replacement. So that money was basically used to buy, to buy fire truck. Okay, over the years. And from what he tells me, this has been going on for years and years and years and years. And that's been kind of the way of Canton.
My question is it legal to use taxpayer money that way? If it's not, that's above and beyond their budget, correct?
I looked at the law, and there's a law out there. It's a budget law, basically. It's called, let me get the exact, it's town law number 181, section 181, annual budget and levy of taxes. Now in that, they're supposed to tell us what their revenues are and what their expenses are, what the appropriations are. They're also supposed to provide us, and not one of them did, they're also supposed to provide us a copy of what their balance sheet says is on there. And again, not one of them did that. So without them telling us what's on that balance, what's on their balance sheet, that makes it really challenging for us to make a good conscious decision on the kind of money that we're giving each of them, other than what we know their expenses are. In all three of the, I'll call them satellite fire departments, Morley, Pirates, and Rensselaer Falls, all three of those folks are running somewhere around, 50,000, I think, are their expenses. So our intention was to provide them with 50,000, which bears out, and that reconciles out. Although we still don't know what their balance sheets say. And the rationale to have the balance sheet is, what we have in the bank. So those monies earmarked for encumbrances for future years. And that's what the reasoning for knowing what the balance sheets are, on the balance sheets, what your cash flow is. So I also look at this as an inequity. Canton's looking for, like I said, originally their town contract, and we brought this up last year, $175,950. Now that wasn't our intention anyways, to put that money in there. That was what our intention was. But even so, if we put in the 78, or, I think we talked about 82 last time, and put in 50 for each of the other three, that actually leaves us with 50,000 in contingency. And I say that because if Canton's using that as basically a capital fund account, that's something that we should be using it for, as a capital fund account. So when a department needs a grand piece of equipment, just like it happens in the county, they have a contingency fund. If you need something, then you come to the board and say, I need X. And if we have it in the contingency and it makes sense, then budget bond, and we allow that to happen. By just turning all of that balance over to one department, I just can't, in my mind, it just seems unfair. It absolutely seems unfair. Granted, it's obviously not my call, but I think in fairness to every single department that's out there, that we have under our umbrella, I think it makes more sense to put it into contingent just to give it to one department. So that's kind of what I found out. So
When you had your conversation with Bob Crow, was it mentioned to him that there was discussion about only giving 82 instead of 117?
well, I had submitted that to him in an email. So he knew that in his
So there
email.
was no further discussion on that?
No, well, I mean, he did, he tried to fight for it, and he gave me some good rationale. I'm not saying he didn't. His argument was if they get all of it, then that just reduces any potential bonding requirements for a fire truck. As an example, they paid out $300,000 for a new pumper. Payment of $300,000 out for a new pumper this year. So I'm guessing that maybe the balance of that is going to have to be bonded or borrowed. I don't know. So, but the law does not say we're allowed to give money away for a capital fund or a fire department. So.
Okay, so why don't we think about that? We have crunched the numbers and we do have a shortfall of $4,200 by putting everything back in. So in order to make it whole, we would have to increase the revenues by another $4,200.
So what does that make?
Doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
109,945.
And I say that because when we started without anything, we were only short the 40,000, well, the 15,000, and that's before we even did anything with the salary.
I'm
Right?
just telling you right now, we just ran the numbers again, and this is the shortfall that we have come up with. So in order to make it whole, we would have to increase the revenues by another $4,200. So that would be 109,945, or as Jim just suggested, go to 110.
Then let's go to 110.
Any agreement with that?
I personally think it's a bad idea, but I'm not gonna hold the budget up over it.
I'll be honest, I did look at the second constable position, and maybe Mike and Rochelle can answer to this. We have two in our budget for that, and is it needed any longer? Leah was hired as a backup to Lester, and then during COVID, we had the two on staff, one upstairs and one downstairs. So I'm gonna ask the justices, do we still need to have that? Is that still needed? Or is it just Lester being able to cover the courts? Those two positions, maybe find my. Yep, the constables. We have, I think it's like 20. So Mike or Rochelle, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, we brought on Leah during COVID because of the amount of people that we still had, being upstairs, downstairs, being separated situation. It's nice to have the backup there, but I don't want to say it's not needed, but it at the same time, it's not as essential as the clerk would be. and potentially could use Leah as per diem for certain case courts. I mean, what we could do is possibly on the heavy court days, have the two, and on the lighter court days, have just the one. And that might free up some funds as well.
All right.
Thank you. So, you know, by us doing this, what if there's gonna be a shortfall? What, you know, the board needs to think, next year, if there's a shortfall, what are we gonna do?
I'd say there's some incentive to have some court dates.
And I guess I have another question for Mike and Rochelle. By going back to the 4 days, is this gonna increase your contractual as far as the mailings and whatnot?
It shouldn't, because it's based on the number of tickets written and the number of people that we have. That's not going to change regardless of when we hold court.
Okay, all right, I was curious about that piece.
We know how, sorry, do we know how many hours that next second constable is?
Well, they're hourly, they're paid hourly, right? So I think what we put in it's an hourly rate. Let me just. The hourly rate was 20, with the 3.5% pay increase, it's $21.54. And for how many hours? 117 hours for the year. So we have 2 positions in there that indicate that. So the Social Security, the total for those 2 positions is what, 5,000 something plus the
$5,500 just for wages. So it's tax on that.
so about $5,500 for those 2 positions. So
For each or?
together.
Combined.
So, and you know, we only pay them when they work. So.
It's kind of a strange.
What's that?
It's a novel concept.
People
paying
only
for
get,
people
people
more.
only get paid. I'm gonna look at that.
Right, we budgeted 4.5 hours a week.
I missed my call.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Is that, so 4.5 hours a week is both of them?
Yeah, because we didn't know if they needed 1 or 2, so Lee is the backup for Lester. Yeah,
Okay.
so there's days when Leah doesn't need to be here, right, Mike and Rochelle, and there's days when Lester's out and then Leah needs to be here, so.
Well, I could say that Lester was out. He had a knee surgery and he was down for a while. And so we needed somebody and Leah stepped in. And then COVID hit just before he came back, COVID hit and we needed 2. It was just the way that worked out. So yeah, that's how she came about.
Oh, okay. All right. So if I'm hearing this correctly, then we can, for the most part, get by with just 1 court security officer.
Probably. I mean, I know on heavy days it gets pretty busy. We had just even today for court, I had people down at the magnetometer and all the way up the staircase into the lobby and out almost to the front door. I mean, we just have that many people and Lester's putting them through the magnetometer, but that doesn't stop other issues such as people violating orders of protection, people getting in fights and arguments and such. So it's definitely nice to have the second constable, but I understand the budget situation the way it is. You know, if we have to go with 1, we've had 1 before and we got by with it. But it certainly isn't something that I would recommend.
Okay.
My concern would be if, you know, if something happened to Lester, who's our backup, right? So I would just.
Right.
So I don't see why we're putting over 2,500 hours.
Yeah.
And the interest of
Move on.
Interest of safety.
Yeah, let's just
Move on.
move on.
Interest of safety.
Well, I brought my idea to the table, so.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so is everybody, are we good with that? The, we're gonna increase that revenue now to 110,000. We'll put the position back in as full-time. That should balance everything. All right, let's go back to the fire. Michelle and Mike, you're welcome to stay on. We're gonna move on to the fire department discussion, but you're more than welcome to stay on. So thank you for coming, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for your input.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to us.
Okay.
I guess what I'll say with regard to fire is if Bob is suggesting to have Canton's, our contract with the Village of Canton Fire Department be for what their budget is. I don't agree with putting it in contingency because we're gonna create a Hunger Games for the end of the year. And then how do we deal with the requests that are gonna come for that? Everybody needs something. I would suggest then making following that 82, whatever the number is you're suggesting, but I would put the rest of it, I would give the rest of it to the smaller departments and keep the same amount of money going into fire and security for the community, just distribute it more evenly and more proportionately. But I think putting it in a contingency is only kicking the can down the road, and we're gonna have issues at the end of the year where we're not gonna know who to give it to because everybody's gonna want something. So why not just distribute it now to the smaller departments?
I'm okay with that. I'm actually okay with that, Bob. My comment though is, I think what we need to do is we need to ask these fire departments to follow the law and provide us their balance sheets, all of them, not just Canton, but Canton Falls, all of them, so that we know. Because again, we really can't make informed decisions without knowing exactly what's there.
I don't disagree, but we're up against a deadline. If they don't give us the information and we withhold all of that money for these departments, we've got a big problem in the town. So it's like,
I hear you.
I mean, we have to operate on good faith. We ask, we have it in the contract, this is what we want, and if they don't fulfill it, that's a bold move to stop the money.
Yeah. All right. I'm okay with that.
That's the bad position that we're in there on that. The
Yep.
money still has to flow at the end of the day.
Yep. I agree.
And I agree with your point. So I think the contingency just kicks an issue down the road. And then come November, December, how are we gonna manage that? So
Right.
if we want to get Canton in line, I suggest keeping the tax rate and giving it to the other departments.
Okay.
That's just me.
What I think you're saying is we would move that 117 down to 82.
Correct.
Then that would be the difference of 35.3
Divided by 3.
divided by 3. So that would give each department an additional 11,007. That's right.
Correct. So, because at the end of the day, $30,000 divided by 4 departments who are gonna make November and December requests amounts to almost nothing towards,
Right.
you know, so. Let's get it where it belongs.
I'm okay with that.
My only comment would be, I've listened to fire for a lot of years, and I still don't understand fire well enough, because a lot of times I don't think we get the information that we really need. What you're saying, Bob Crow indicated to you that they're putting money aside that we give them towards buying equipment.
Mhm.
So, and I can remember several times where Canton Fire Department has showed up and has got the town board to commit to purchasing, whether it's building a building or purchasing trucks. We've been involved in purchasing a lot of trucks. We've finally gotten away from it. And if we're taking that money away, I do believe that we're going to be hearing from them. And so just caution you on that. So the only other thing that I would say is I don't have a problem with giving the outsiders more money. If we gave Canton 100, they've got 18 more that they can put towards equipment or whatever. And we give the other ones 5,000 more apiece, but we're gonna get them to 50, that's a 10% increase. You know, and again, maybe over the next year, we can get a better handle on what goes on, because, you know, it's one of those things that town board only deals with it once a year.
Yep.
You know, there's communities out there, and I'll use Lisbon as an example. You know, there's just one fire department that are run by a fire district.
Right.
Elected officials that know and understand what, know what they need, but those commissioners, they handle the money for Lisbon Fire. They report directly to the taxpayers in Lisbon, elected officials, and they do it right. We have one fire district in this community that isn't doing it right and never will do it right and get it right. And our problem is we got four departments that are being funded by several different jurisdictions.
Exception of one.
With the exception of fire. Fire gets their money from town outside only. Morley gets money from town outside and the Hamlet of Morley, which is a district. Village gets it from town outside and the village.
Rensselaer Falls,
Rensselaer Falls gets it from the village, Rensselaer Falls, and town outside. And so it's confusing, always has been confusing. And I don't think it'll ever get support, but yeah, when you've got something as big as fire, where you're getting up in the couple $100,000 range of taxpayer money.
Yeah.
And all we're doing is, we get a request and we're trying to pass it on, and you know, we've had a fire summit, multiple, and where we've tried to figure out how the pie should be cut. The question's always that. We think we're funding fire enough. We've just never been certain whether the pie is being cut correctly. And no
Right.
matter how hard we try, we can't find out if we're cutting the pie correctly.
Well, and if you remember, in 2018, there was quite a bit that was committed, but there was never anything in writing. So the first thing we did was, okay, let's get everything in writing and come to an agreement for payoffs, right? So we paid off 2 trucks. We paid off the, our commitment to the trucks. And then we paid off the new fire station commitment. In addition to the 117 that they were getting.
Right.
So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the town of Canton has invested a lot of money into the Canton Village Fire Department.
And I mean,
Just over the years, right?
visuals and all.
And then the smaller departments, you know, right, and we did try to get that changed. And it didn't work. But for whatever
And the
reason,
smaller departments that are buying equipment, they're buying it out of their regular budget.
Right.
So I mean, for Canton, we were making payments on equipment plus giving a budget surplus that was also going through that equipment. So we were actually paying for pieces of equipment, not once, but twice.
And they're buying their equipment. Well, I mean.
Second,
I do-
third hand, right?
Well, you know, Rensselaer Falls, as they, I think, buy a new tanker at one point. And so, and I mean, they could afford to do it, but they have outside sources of revenues. They
also bust their chops.
They do fundraising.
So it's a fundraising refurbish, they got.
And so, But I mean, I don't think we'll ever solve those issues at this time. All we get to do is decide, and if they don't like it, complain about it.
So we've heard from Bob and Bob. On your opinions on what to do, and so Bob Crow is aware of this potential. Bob
Yeah.
Santamar? I'm sorry?
I did send it to him in an email, so he's aware of it.
The preliminary budget, we would have to do it like,
What's that?
because this is a preliminary budget, and it has to do with a separate taxing jurisdiction, I'm wondering if we have to do something by motion to change this, or if we want to do it just by consensus. So what you're saying is cut them down to the 82.
Whatever Bob suggested, and then the
And then
balance
get
would go
balance.
between the three.
And
Angela
Angela ran these
broke it down.
numbers.
But Jim also had a suggestion.
Yeah, Jim said, bring it up to
Bring
100.
it up to 100 and then give the rest of them the balance of that.
But Bob, with your research legally, can we go above and beyond what they're saying in their budget?
Not based on what I'm seeing.
So I mean, we're kind of stuck at 78.
Not, well, 78 was the cost, so we can assume that there's going to be some increases in costs. That's fair. That's a fair assumption for us to make. You know, but because like I said, none of us received a balance sheet. We don't know what their net position is, which is the balance sheet. We don't know what their net position is. So I guess that's my biggest issue is
What they did give us though said the balance to savings, right? What we did get.
right.
That basically sounds like you start aside the budget and that's going to capital savings, whatever they want.
Right.
Oh,
Right. I mean, again, the disadvantage is we'd have to go in and help them bond for a fire truck. I mean, that would be the other option. But have we been doing this legal the way we do all along? And I don't see where we have.
So I think if we're pointing to a legal precedent to do this, regardless of past practice, I think we ought to stick to the letter of law.
So what would the allocation end up being?
So if we go to the 82,000 for Canton.
Right.
Down 117 to 82,000, and then divide the balance between the three smaller ones, which would be 11,766.67. That would give them, the smaller departments, up to 61,767 each.
They're gonna put them over their budget or not, we're gonna be in the same problem with the street.
It is.
Well, that's why I suggested contingency.
Yeah.
Well, Perry's is in, yeah, $700, but they're at 47 something. I'll bring them up. I don't know. Sure, another thing is, like, budget with their expenses, what they give us, and use tax rate.
Yeah, the other option is reducing tax rate. That's the only other option.
Well, I'm not sure I'm good with that though. Just because of, I don't want to I also don't want to hurt the fire departments because I respect everything that they do. And I know they work really hard to do what they do. And I don't know that I want to do that.
Thanks, Bob. It ain't gonna reduce yours because you're in the Morley Fire District.
Thanks, Jeff.
There I am. Bob, John, and I would make that okay. Our fire tax would go down.
If for some reason we have something in here contingency, already 15,000, excuse me, contractual of the 15,200, because, so the total we've been collecting is the 282,500.
Right.
Yeah,
I think we need to find out if we have to exhaust the contingency before the end of the year, and if we do, then we should really think about how we would do that. So someone would have to come in with a budget amendment then in order for it to
Right.
still be legally to say this is why we need this extra money.
Right.
They'd have to amend their budget, give us amended budget to show the shortfall. And we could take that out of contingency, but my fear is we're gonna end up with a balance in that we're not gonna know what to do at the end of the year, and we can't let it roll over. So that's a problem.
Well, you're right, because it does put us between a catch 22. You know, based on how I'm reading the law, and to be honest with you, maybe that's something Eric wants to look into. Just to verify what I'm seeing. You know, and make sure that I'm not missing anything. Generally, you know, if it's in contingency, isn't spent, then it goes to a fund balance somewhere. But if it's a special fund, then it would have to go into, I guess the way I would think, it would have to go into each one of them to zero it out.
Heidi, do you know where the rescue unit is with their life pack situation? I know they're still raising money for that.
all right, so what we need to do is make a decision for tonight so that we can get a budget out to the public for the public hearing.
This is just tentative, correct?
Yeah, it's a preliminary tentative, yeah.
Right.
It can change, right?
That's-
Because we don't have to pass the budget until November 18th.
Right. So why don't we do this? We're suggesting 82, 50, 50, 50. Put 50 in the contingency. I think that's the balances left over. Put the balance in contingency for now, just as a placeholder. And then determine, you know, based on how Eric reads that law, what we do with that, and then find out that we do need to disperse it one way or another, that we disperse it in the, you know, we make that change before the budget gets passed.
All right, so let me try to rephrase what you just said.
Okay.
Did you say?
So keep the smaller departments at 50.
Correct.
Go to 82 for the Canton.
82 for Canton, and the
and
balance
then 50,
50, right? And put that in. contingency.
put the balance in the contractual contingency line item.
Yeah.
Is everybody in agreement with that? And then we'll have Eric review that law. Does that balance us out?
And I would like to see the contingency, unless there's an emergency situation, to be redistributed then, if we could do it equally, so that we just all of a sudden just aren't giving money back to Canton at the end of the day again, because that's what could very well happen. And then what did we gain? And what did we gain?
Right.
So,
Okay, so let's,
Okay with that.
again, sure that, you know, the total is 282,500 that we collect, right? And so does that add up to 282,500? What's this 15? 15,200. There's something funky.
I gotta look at what, there's something that happened there this year. There's a budget for 15,200. Last year it was 16,700. Right. Is that?
So that should be,
Is that the money
well,
that?
no, this is.
Hiring money, or the
so this should be-
Morley money?
That's.
That's Morley money.
More, the money still.
Well, we already have the fire district money in there for 13,214. We already have that in there. But for just the fire department contracts, it should be 282,500. So, yeah, I would say take that. Yeah, take this out.
Why do you want the bottle? Kombucha. Probiotic.
The contingency line would be 50,500.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is everybody in agreement with that?
Yeah.
All right, we just want to make sure because this is gonna be legally noticed tomorrow, okay? Okay, so 82, 50, 50, 50, and then 13,214 for the fire district in Morley, and then 50,500 in a contingency. So you can just put it on this line and just rename that.
Do you plan on following up with Chief Crow for?
Oh, yeah, I can. Yeah. Yep. I've got his number, so I can give him a call.
Okay, is that all we have for the budget? All right, then we'll get the singleton to Heidi tomorrow and she'll send out the legal notice and then the public hearing is Monday. The 7th, yes.
So,
At 6 PM and then we also have a presentation. We're doing after that. Did you say 6:30 on the 7th?
Correct.
Okay, and
And
that has to be-
that needs to be noticed.
that needs to be
And
publicly
and
noticed.
Mike McQuaid was gonna get a hold of you on that.
yeah, that's gotta be enough. That's gotta be enough.
Oof, okay. Everybody good? I need a motion to adjourn at 7:47.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carrie. Angela, thank you. Sure. Appreciate it.
North Country now's gone. Plain Dealer's got a scoop on the story.